Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Arts Fort Worth. I'm Robert Long, the exhibitions manager, and we'll be talking to Enrique Nevarez and Charles Gray about his exhibition Mom, about his practice, about family, how family plays into that work. So thank you all for coming and enjoy.
Thank you so much. Let's give it up. Yeah. So, as it was just introduced, I'm Charles. Enrique Nevarez. We met each other at UTA, and he has since gone on to TCU, where he's doing his MFA program, and it's been an honor watching him develop this work in this series. And the first thing that I really want to ask and bring forward is the idea of family. As you can see, he is choosing to use the women in his family as the vehicle for most of his conversations. So I want to start off asking you, what is your connection? And in using them as the vehicle, is there a specific way you wanted the viewer to take in the women in your family?
Well, yeah. So with the idea for the show that I wanted was one to kind of get a sense of how I grew up, and me being raised by sort of the matriarch of my family, like all of these women, whether they were my aunts or my grandmas and my mom, which sort of kind of was sort of the idea for the title, Mom. Because I was like, I could have said Mama Carmen, my mom, a specific, person, but I was like, no, I kind of wanted to include all of them in moments because, it takes a lot of people to raise one person, and it's not just always one, person raising somebody. So, and I was like, I wanted to have certain moments with each and every one of them in the show, in the 15 works that I have, kind of then be depicted. So, yeah.
And when you're dealing with them, they're always in the process of nurturing.
Yes.
As a person who was receiving the nurture, how important was that for the viewer to see them in the act of showing and giving that affection?
Super important. I documented all of these scenes by myself. So this was, and I was sort of like an assistant in many ways, like in different moments with them, and they also allowed me to be in their space because you get the boys that go outside and they're taking drinking the beers or playing the soccer and whatnot, and I was always like, I kind of want to be in the kitchen or in like the domestic interior parts where I felt comfortable, and they were just like, okay, cool, you want to like chop some onions for me? Can you clean up like the kitchen for me? And while I'm cooking, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. So, and this was sort of a introduction to like how and where I am usually most of the time. Even to this day, I'm like going on Saturdays or whatnot, and this was all recorded. I think for the most part, the only one that's late than the other ones is. This one's from 2018, but the rest is from 2 years, from 2019, 2020, and a little bit of 2021. So like 3 years, I would say, of work. So, and then of course also asking permission to do the show as well with them, because I was like, I'm very private with family, and I'm like, can I do this? I really was excited about it, and I was like, I did. It kind of gave me the idea with I did at UTA. I was with Dr. Beth Wright, and we did a grad class with called Art of the Human Condition, and sort of trying to combine medical with art and how you can do that within your own practice. And I was thinking about my elders and my aunts and my family and people that aren't usually in museum ways and aspects or see themselves and stuff, and I was like, how can I hybrid and combine myself and what I do and give them a conversation to be in?
That's because now you're working in the level of I'm enjoying these people so much that I want to share them
Yeah.
but then the consciousness of the viewer's eye is seeing, you know what, these women who are showing and caring for me, they're also functioning as something that is caring for the audience. Because when you're looking at your material, it's really three-dimensional, even the flatter surfaces, and you're inviting the viewer to like come and be a part of this. So like kind of segueing with the material, it's more than just paint on here. So if you don't mind like giving people the rundown on all the things that you used.
Yep. I go and use. I would, when I was kind of going back with like my material, I kind of wanted to bring back this nostalgia of craft, which I would use a lot during my projects when I was younger. And I would do them with like my great-grandmother or my mom and whatnot. And it was just this sort of stance that I felt that I needed to bring back the material that I would work with, which was sequins, you know, like the glitter, now the kids have everything at the stores, but back in the day, there was like, you know, rose art and those like neon colors and also toys and whatnot, but glitter, resin, polylactic filament, which is sort of this nice piping move that kind of can look
Explain
as
to the
knitting.
people who don't know what you just said. What is the process of putting that on?
Well, you have to. It usually goes with like a heater, and you're piping in a sort of sense. Sort of the same with fabric paint. So I also would use fabric paint for that like language talk of food. Because I don't know. Going back to the kitchen, I was wanting to be a pastry chef when I was younger at Ben Barber, and I was doing a lot of the caking, the caking decoration for the crew, and I was sort of going back and forth with that and thinking of why I wanted to be a pastry chef, which was because of my great-grandma and my grandmothers and cooking and what they would do and how food just brings people together. So, but then when I found painting, I was like, painting in a brush didn't do it for me in a way, and I was like, I need more layers. There needs to be something more.
Right.
And pouring medium, which is also something that I would use in a way of collaging with like my scissors and whatnot. And just adding texture like you would with food was just something that it was an easy transition. It was just like, this is it.
Right. So seeing the layer of the different materials, was it easy for you to go from using essentially melting plastic onto a flat surface? Was it easy for you to transition from thinking of a flat two-dimensional space to these sculptures and the video and the installation? Were there like moments where you got stuck? Because I see what you're saying with the painting, and the painting does have a formula, right? I'm gonna start with a drawing, I have paint, I have other materials like you would with a recipe.
Yeah.
You have your flour, you have your milk, you have your... So, but when it comes to the three-dimensional work, is this, first off, are these new to you?
They're super new. So you're probably talking about the shirt over here, Está Listo?
Mm-hmm.
That one was a bet, because I had to pour, that's pouring medium, and you have to have it dried and cured, and usually you have to also wait to see if you have any cracks. So I would make a frame, and then you're taping, and whatnot, just making sure that all the cracks or there's nothing that can seep through, which also comes with purpose of some of the frames that I would make for the ones that are with resin as well. But with that one, that's usually collage work. So I would use that for like the shirts. You can see it in maybe some of the elements in a lot of these paintings, or like the things that would be sculpturally up. I'd usually use it for that. With the shirt, it was a lot of material to bet on, because you have to be resourceful.
Right.
Because it's a bet. It's like, I have to wait another 2 or 3 weeks to do this. pour again, and a certain color. Like there's pink, there's purple, and I usually like light colors because if it's a light color like yellow, pink, red, I can dye it. And if I need to transition into another color aspect, I can use that resource of like using tempera to like paint it another color.
So if it doesn't work out, you can work around it by dyeing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is also a great thing about transparencies and neons is like they're friendly colors, they're things that you can manipulate really easy. So most of my pours, I like them being a lighter color. Like the ones that I'm betting on, like the big pink frames, I'm like, I need that as a pink, or this as a yellow, or this as an orange, in case I need to dibble dabble in different paintings at the same time. Yeah.
So what would you say they're at in comparison to the approach to the traditional surfaces? Is there other things that you want to try, or do you feel like this is something that you would continue doing?
I want to continue doing it. I actually really liked it. I kind of combined it with a ready-made or found object that I had at home, which was a hanger that was of my great-grandma's that she had, and I was like, how can I make the nostalgic feel or come back with the rest of the work? And I was just like, the material I feel like could do that, and thankfully you can bend and manipulate it in a way that's like manageable for me.
And it reads really intentional to the idea of like when I do transition to other mediums like the video, I'm thinking of like the thought to put the banner above the video, like that working together. When you're doing these, do you do these kind of at the same time you're planning this, or you plan one thing and do the other?
At the same time, I feel, which is why I try to work in a big space, because I'm going back and forth and seeing how they can talk to each other. With like the shirt here, I kind of also wanted the material to talk in different ways, because I used the same material with the shirt as with Queremos Pastel Pastel. It's the same pinks that are in the roses that when I'm manipulating and trying to make it look like a whole pastry cake, and those decors that you put on top of the cake, it's the same material as the shirt.
Okay.
And it's like expanding the resources.
And you said this is house caulking on the side of this, right?
Yeah, which is something you use to like seal the sides for any kind of house, which also does piping again. So much hard material to like. My hands were so tired every time doing it, and I would use a piping tool to manipulate the form, because I wanted it to look like a cake.
Right. So
I'm holding that and then also pushing and trying to make it look like a pastel.
Because that's a very big jump. Because they're all very, I can tell your hand, I can see your hand and everything.
Yeah.
So just a jump from this, especially to the video, which you could speak more on like about your family video, but it seems so seamless to me. Like it takes me to another level of like still being in this universe. So like this is one dimension of the universe, and I step into a third dimension of it. So like when you got to this point, where were you at with your practice? Is your mind still the same, or you still like when you're doing the physical stuff, or does it like do a shift?
It does a little bit of a shift, but a good shift. I was these two pieces, I was hesitant having, just because it's very like you get to see the raw stuff from where I get video and photos and Polaroids from, and all of like what I use as documented wise to get this paintings to be where they are. And the video, which is about a minute long, the first video part is not mine, but the other three are, and it's just again moments that I appreciate, and that I know that also a lot of the women, usually keep together, which the first part is my mom and dad's wedding. Second is Sammy's birthday in Oak Cliff. Third is my cousin's wedding, which all the women were planning on doing. And then the fourth is my great grandma taking care of the last one that she met of the great grandkids. So I wanted to put those moments in there and have them loop and be infinite, and also kind of have the audience not just have paintings, and maybe video or sculpture is something that they might respond to. So I was considering that as well.
It functions as a time capsule because with a painting, the time frame, like when this image was a reference image was captured, the way a painting has like this, I can't really put a date on it, look, it's like this could have been done any number of years. But when you do use the time capsule of video, where I can tell this video was taken with your parents, like you helping put together that time frame for me, it's adding a historical like narrative to it as well, and of culture and of history.
Yeah, I actually got the inspiration also with the video with my mom, who she will make videos yearly of any kind of event, whether it's like an anniversary or a birthday or just a recap of the years. She's a video person, and sometimes she's like, I'm like, you're curating your own thing,
So
Mom.
it's part of her culture, essentially.
It's part of her thing. Yeah, I'm like, it's 40 minutes long, usually 50. It's not a minute, but it's 50 or 40 minutes long, and I'm like, it's work.
Right.
I'm like, she's putting the background music, she's putting transitions in and stuff, and I was like, I want to do a little homage to that as well, and bring that in, because that's what I'm usually like having. That's what I see most of the time too when I'm at home.
It's in your family.
Like right now, we're doing little. My mom's birthday is today, so she's curating dancing. And the whole family's doing individual dances, and she's wanting to do TikTok interactions. So she's gonna have one side where it's the person, and then she's dancing with them. And I'm like, I'm telling you, she curates these videos.
That's a beautiful thing.
And I'm like, okay, I guess we'll do the dance today.
Yeah.
You know? So, but yeah, it's her world. She loves video.
Okay. So would you go there more? Or?
I probably would, in a way that hopefully I can bring some more flavor to. I want to challenge myself in that way to do video.
And I gotta ask with the sense as well, because the way that you chose to bring us all in, from the visual to the traditional to now, the fragrances specifically, there are a lot of cultural connections with fragrance and spices. As a thought process, were you doing this in a way that you knew it's gonna, not only is it gonna connect to a culture, like instinctually people who smell this already know they're gonna be there, but also for people who, like myself, are not in that culture, you're adding now to my lexicon of smells and scents.
Yeah, sensory and memory. It's just, and visual. I wanted to bring smell into it because it was actually a tradition that I kind of made with them, and I kind of wanted to give back through the years. So I used to work at a candle shop, and they like candles, so it was sort of this other conversation that I could have with the elders, and whether it was like jasmine or cinnamon or whatever, they'd bring up a story, a random story, and we'd have a nice dialogue, and I would have not had that conversation probably if that didn't trigger their memory to even bring up the conversation. So it was new for sure for me. I'm usually a painter. I'm usually just doing figurative stuff, but I was like trying to consider all my audience, because I was like, I didn't want to just give the traditional aspect of talking to the wall and whatnot, and maybe someone might interact with it and get something out of that for themselves.
No, it reads very much as thoughtful. I want to give a chance for people to ask questions, so if you don't mind, if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand while we're here.
So, the painting over here, that's sort of like inspiration of the cape.
Yeah.
And I was, we had talked about it, and you had actually been considering displaying it as a cake, possibly at one point.
Yeah.
So would you, in the future, now that I know that you had actually considered being a pastry chef, bring the element of sharing food and making food into your practice?
Yes. We still got to work on some good recipes, though. I have to go back and brush up. I've been in school so much, and I haven't been in the kitchen as much as I'd want to, but I am trying to. And with pandemic, I was actually going to take I graduated in 2019, and I was going to take a break. And during that year break, I was supposed to hang out with my grandparents more. But pandemic hit, I was like, nah. And then I applied and went back to grad school. So we'll have to figure out when I can make some recipes with them and start learning some more.
I'm sure you could brainstorm.
I'll brainstorm a little bit.
Yeah. That would be interesting to see. Pre-wrapped goodies and treats. Because I'm sure, like, now seeing this and hearing that idea, I feel like you would do something with the wrapping bakery to wrap whatever this treat is.
I was gonna probably try to do that a little bit, but it ran out of time. But I was like, you know what? We'll put it in for another show. But I did do install work with the Oak Cliff Cultural Center before, where I would bring my own furniture, my own kind of space, and it was crit room. But I like the idea of the sense of kind of showing people, like installing a whole environment in which we can kind of get out of it can be more opening for people of the community to just come in and be like, there's a table here, there's a chair here, there's things that I know in a good, less intimidating for them. So hopefully I will maybe put some conversation of even making paintings and having them read as something that can be on a table.
Yeah. It seems interesting, like less intimidation when the gallery and the museum is so not touch, that I think the idea when you can touch something in a space, it's initially intimidating. You're like, can I touch this? Or like a takeaway? Or like, sure, I can really take this out. And like,
yeah, and we were talking about the shirt, and with the shirt, it was a gesture of memory of my great-grandma, who was an ironer, so she'd iron on my clothes. It didn't matter if I was like, at school or whatnot, and she would always say, "Está listo." She'd be like, "It's ready," and she'd yell. She was yelling. But I wanted to install it with the silhouette of a tape, and then have the doorknob be at an angle, and then nail it to the doorknob. But then I was like, it's such an vibrant pink, and I know some kid is gonna touch it.
yeah.
So I was like, I'll save that for later, probably.
No, you got a lot of ideas I wouldn't even I wouldn't even have thought that you was gonna go that way. So, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, can you talk about once you're done with all the layers of the materials that you're using, and you come down to the moment that I know how, like the applying of the resin, what was going through your head, knowing that resin is like a 50-50.
Yeah, so I've had my year-long I've probably been messing with resin for about 2 or 3 years now. And funny thing, that was the last piece that was done for the show, and it was still winter and cold. And I was at the studio, and I was like, I really want this to shine, because I also wanted to have a conversation with another piece as well, Abrázame. And I was like, it would be the only one that had resin. I was like, I need to have something else, and I wanted it to pop and shine like candy or whatnot, just because it's like a pastel.
Right.
Temperature was the bet, and measuring is always sort of you kind of just you're gambling a little bit. It's kind of like watercolor; it does its own thing. So if you didn't mix enough, if you didn't mix correctly, and also if you don't have like the right stuff like torches, because you make air bubbles as you're doing the resin, but you don't want those air bubbles there because it's distracting and it fogs up the stuff underneath. That was, and also I purposely also made the frame with it go together because I wanted to seal with the caulking. So I did an inch off from the canvas, and I was like sealing, because I'm like, I've already had so much trauma with the resin, and it's still with me, and I'm like thinking about even pouring medium. I'm like, gonna have to wait a couple hours, and I'm like, I just chill. I'm just like, are you good? Are you gonna not do anything crazy on me? So if I do resin pours, I will do a frame with it because I just find it more safer for me. Because in case I want to go and add more, then everything's sealed. It's not going to go anywhere.
Have you ever thought about polishing?
Yes, I have thought about polishing. I haven't really found a purpose for it as much yet, but we're getting into the materials. We'll maybe get into there later. Expand. I'm always adding something else to my paintings most of the time.
Well, now I have to ask, because you just said 2 hours, what is the time spent into something like that, if you could guess?
About that one took a while. I'd say like I did 9 hours each day, probably. It took me like 2 to 3 weeks because you have to let the caulking dry, and then I couldn't do anything until the fabric paint would dry because a lot of the stuff is piping. And the glitter glue would probably dry faster depending on like if I did it thin enough. Okay. But yeah, it would take about 3 to 4 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks.
That's tough. That is tough.
Have you ever thought of laying resin, adding a layer of material, and then laying more resin, and then laying another, so that way it has like a 3D effect?
Yes, I have. I've done only first layer cures. I haven't done like second or third unless needed for like purposes of adding like plastic or polylactic filament, but not for see-through purpose yet. But yeah, we're getting there. We're leveling up a little bit. Any questions? Any other questions by chance?
All right.
I don't have a question, but I do want to thank you. For people like me who had no family, this is like a fantasy of what I wanted when I was a little girl. And for you to offer yourself and open yourself and let people see these wonderful women and these domestic scenes, it's really fabulous. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming. And a lot of things have been getting canceled, and I hope everyone has had a happy new year and a healthy happy new year. And thank you, Charles, for coming here and moderating and being so dear and taking time off and helping out with moderating for me.
Of course. Well, that wraps it up, guys. Thank you all for coming.
Thank y'all.